Well, health authorities have discovered a new coronavirus variant spreading in the UK. They say this mutation appears to be 10% more transmissible than the BA2 subvariant of Omicron. The newly identified XE variant is described as a mutation of the BA1 and BA2 Omicron strains. Well, for someone who actually does understand all of that, the CEO of Higher Health, Dr. Ramneek Ahluwalia. Dr. Ahluwalia, good afternoon to you, and thank you for your time on the pulse. I'm going to have to start by asking you to explain what's different about this variant and where it comes from.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Stephen. Stephen, COVID-19, as we always knew, was a mutating virus, which means it's going to keep on trying to mutate to find ways to survive in a human body and try to be more dominant over human body. And that's what exactly this virus is trying. So what we have found now, as in what the World Health Organization has explained from United Kingdom, is what we call it as a recombinant variant of COVID-19. So in one human cell, we had the Omicron BA1, and then the same BA2, which was a subvariant of the Omicron, and they came to one human body of a human cell. And what happens is in a viral evolution is that when you have two viruses, probably of the same family like the coronavirus, inside the same human cell, what they do among each other is do some genetic transfer among themselves. And that's exactly what happened. And they recombined together with the properties of both BA1 and the BA2, the subvariants of Omicron, to find themselves a new variant, which probably is 10 times or 10% more transmissible than the original Omicron. As we knew that Omicron was the fifth variant of concern that the World Health Organization informed the entire world. And South Africa saw its fourth wave, which was predominantly in December, which was because of this new variant called Omicron. So now this two subvariants combine itself to form itself a new recombinant variant, which seems to now be causing spikes in Europe, specifically in England. And we are going to watch what we call it three things. One, we already know it's 10% more transmissible. But the second thing we're going to watch is its clinical patterns, whether this does become more virulent. For me, at this moment, there's no panic. If it's from the same family of Omicron, we believe that South Africa has enough natural immunity or acquired immunity because we presume 75% of South Africans have got COVID-19 either in the first, second, third wave, but predominantly in the fourth wave. And then we have something called the vaccine immunity, which has shown effectiveness against the Omicron variant. And similarly, seeing that this is an offspring of the Omicron, though, however, it's formed a new variant, we do think our immune system will be strong enough to hold it. But only time will come and tell us whether does it have more escaped mutations, whether it does hide into our human body, allows it to have a free flow in our human body, binding into human cells. But one thing is for sure, it's more transmissible, it's more contagious at this stage.
So if it's more transmissible, that's something we worry about, but we also worry about the symptoms. So many people have had, I nearly said Omicron, but have had COVID-19 that many people now believe that it's endemic in our society. In other words, most people have resistance to it in some way, shape or form. At this stage, is there any doubt on the severity of the symptoms? Do we need to re-prepare our health system, I suppose, is really the question.
Very early to say. We only have about 600 genomic sequencing so far from United Kingdom. But what we've seen is, because it's 10% more transmissible and seeing the spikes it's seeing in Europe, it seems to be that it does evade the immune system response, which means for some time when it enters the human body, our first and second line cannot recognize it, which means that's how the virus mutates and changes its shape and color so that it can evade our immune system. But eventually, what we call it as our third line of defense eventually recognizes it and tries to overpower, and that's why we see something called the breakthrough infection. That's what Europe is seeing at this stage. What we're going to be seeing now in South Africa is that our newly acquired immune system, which is through the recently passed fourth wave, which is the Omicron, and of course the vaccine immunity that has now at least 60% of people above the age of 60 and 30% above the age of 18 have something called the boosted immunity. How will that phase? Because that will decide the clinical patterns. But what you are right is that what we're seeing is symptoms we did not see in the first and second wave. We were different in the third wave when Delta came. And when our Omicron subvariant BA2 came, we differently saw clinical patterns or symptoms which are not even similar to how the COVID-19. Now, one thing, Stephen, what we have to watch is what WHO is saying is another recombinant variant called an XD or XF, which is a recombination of Delta and the Omicron. And as we knew, Delta was highly virulent compared to Omicron, which means the clinical patterns that will come out of this recombination are something we are watching. WHO has alerted. This is for the scientific world to observe now. But for now, I would not panic for our population to worry about, but just to be observant, knowing this is there, and something for us to clearly see whether our immune system will be compromised or not, considering that this is a more contagious variant at this stage.
Dr. Ahluwalia, it's fascinating to me. If we go back to, I think it was late November, early December last year, scientists in this country announced the discovery of the Omicron variant, and frankly, the world went into panic. People were not allowed to come to this country. We were not allowed to go to those countries. People who went to the UK had to go into all kinds of terrible isolation, etc. This time around, we have a new variant being announced, and, well, it seems almost as if most people don't notice.
I fully agree with you, Stephen. That's the world we live in, and that's not the right world. It's the same thing applies to our vaccine equity at this moment around the world, which is a big tussle between the developing and the developed world. And you're absolutely right. This genomic sequencing is, or surveillance in epidemiology on COVID-19 has shown a new science to the world that we can actually follow genomic sequencing, the variations of these COVID, because what we are trying to do is early detection so that we can be ready with our arsenals to face this. But now what is happening is that when a developing world like South Africa explains or finds through its scientific advancements, we get into restrictions. The whole world starts going into a panic mode as if it's a South African variant. That's definitely Omicron was never a South African variant. It was just detected in South Africa. Similarly, this new variant called the XE is actually not a UK variant. It's detected in UK. It means the scientists in UK have been able to find some genomic sequencing which are worrying, and WHO has recognized this variant as a concern for us to be worried about. But now the world is not going into a panic mode of restricting flights to UK, and UK is not getting into the red band. Well, we'll watch how the next week flows, but I do not expect. And that's exactly what we saw in the vaccine equity. When the vaccines were paid off by the developed world and went into 3 times of their own population storage, while the whole Africa was waiting, or the Asia was waiting, or countries which needed. And nobody is realizing in Europe that if you leave Africa without the vaccines, if you do not let vaccines have access for Africans to get, the variants will be formed then from a population who's not vaccinated, because of, the virus actually loves a body which do not give it a fight or do not give this resistance, a free-flow body where it's either an immunocompromised body, which is highly possible in a non-vaccinated people. And that's exactly what the world is not realizing, that this virus takes a matter of time to go. As we have found in UK, it's a matter of time. It's going to spread to the entire world, including South Africa. So I think equity, understanding the virus and being understanding, it's actually a very interesting subject. And I hope the world starts understanding science and starts believing and not doing what it did to South Africa. And I pray we do not do the same to UK as such.